Today we're going to talk about Dabo Swinney and all that's coming up after the bumper.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to my son's YouTube channel?
Mama, no!
Just snap the damn ball, RJ.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. So it's OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today we're going to talk about Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney, who gave an interview where he said, among other things, I am very happy with my 10-year, $93 million contract to be the head coach of the Clemson Tigers football team. And yeah, I don't really think that I want to go anywhere at all, even a place like Alabama, where I was a walk-on wide receiver, and I worked for legendary coach Gene Stallings, and wouldn't, not like to follow my friend Nick Saban should he decide to retire and or step down because, well, everybody will tell you them hips, they stay bad. Look, I thought that wasn't necessarily the most interesting thing that Dabo Swinney said. Dabo, Swinney said about, football. I thought one of the most interesting things he said about football was that he couldn't predict what was going to happen in the future, which is another way of saying, yeah, Clemson Tigers were absolutely right to put those Alabama buyouts in my contract that make it prohibitive, little cost prohibitive to go and get him from Clemson, but also recognizing that Alabama is one of only a handful of universities, if not the only university, that would pay the buyout to pay Dabo Swinney a lot more money to coach football in Tuscaloosa if Nick Saban was not the guy in Tuscaloosa. I also thought it was interesting that rather than coach players that get paid to play college football, he'd rather just coach pro football, or at least that's what he said, right? He's like, I don't really want to coach pro football players. If that's what I want to do, I just go pro football. I also was wondering out loud, how many people want to hire Dabo Swinney as their guy in the NFL? We hear the clamorings for Lincoln Riley. We've even heard mutters of Ryan Day. Nick Saban been there, done that. Steve Spurrier had been there and done that. With Urban Meyer, not so much. And after what Chip Kelly proved he could not do, I'm not necessarily of the thought that there's a whole lot of folks outside that think that Cliff Kingsbury is going to do such a good job at Arizona as the head coach of the Cardinals. However, I do think they're going to be on faucet failure for quite some time because all my man Kyler Murray does is drip. So it's going to be real nice to watch for a while. But we're all going to be wondering if Cliff Kingsbury's air raid can translate to the NFL. I think that it can, but I'm also an air raid truther, and that's just part of what it means to be an Oklahoma fan. But in regard to Dabo, that's not the most interesting story to me about any of this. The most interesting story to me about any of what Dabo Swinney is involved in is he continues to put out recruiting classes that are ridiculous over the last 3 years in particular, right? And then you look at this 2020 class, which is loaded. It's embarrassing how many 5-stars and how many top-rated kids are going to go play football in a puke orange jersey in Clemson, South Carolina. Do you know what's in South Carolina? You are. That's what's in South Carolina, and yet Dabo Swinney is out here recruiting. I mean, and after watching his speech, impromptu as it was, after winning the national championship over Alabama where they skull-dragged, mollywop, destroyed Alabama football, I got to say that I committed to Clemson based on that man's strength, and I think that is his biggest strength. I also think the most underrated part of Dabo Swinney's entire game is that he keeps his assistants very happy. And by happy, I mean well paid. Brent Venables is one of the best at what he does. He's also one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid defense coordinator in the country. And you're talking about guys that just don't want to leave. They don't want to go anywhere unless they want to have their head job, and it ain't always worked out well. I'm looking at you, Chad Morris. All right? So the folks at Clemson know what they have. And in having Dabo, I'm also looking around and going, he said, I got paid market value for my $93 million over 10 years. And I'm saying you don't want to pay players their market value because you're going to sit here and pretend that Trevor Lawrence isn't worth millions of dollars to your college football program today and that he shouldn't receive some of that money today because he is an amateur by whose definition? The NCAA's, not by ours, not even by yours. Like, you can say that the kids are going there to get a scholarship to get an education, But you get an education, you can get a job. And if you can get a job making millions of dollars, you're not going to college. That's not how this works. We go to college to get a better paying job. We don't go to college as a prerequisite for getting a job. If somebody's going to pay you millions of dollars to do a job, whether or not you have a diploma from said university does not matter. And we have lots of examples to point to this. I know everybody wants to point to places like Apple with Steve Jobs, places like Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg. But there's quite a lot of jobs out there for which we don't really need a college degree. Looks good, makes us feel better about ourselves, helps us get along better in society. But outside of that, you don't need it. So if Trevor Lawrence is basically acting as a pro, playing like a pro, already being people are already drafting him in the 2021 draft as the number 1 overall pick, regardless of what the NFL landscape looks like then. It's kind of like Zion Williamson in the NBA draft right now. He's just the best that there is in this class, and you're going to take him. You're going to figure out what you're going to do with him after you take him, but you're going to take him, and you're going to pay him his value, his market value. And because the NFL has a rookie scale in place, we know that what that market value is. It's about $30 million over 4 years. I think Trevor Lawrence can stand to make a ton of that right now. And I think that most of the guys playing at Clemson can make a ton of what they're worth right now relative to the market. And yet, Dabo Swinney apparently doesn't want to do that. Find that interesting, even as he puts together the best recruiting class in college football today. All right, that's it for me. Yes.